Yeah. Hello, hello. If you want more or less, you can just tell me. It's fine. Yeah, you have some options to tune it there also, or because I think it's yeah. If you're getting it through, yeah. Yeah. Because yeah, usually maybe some people talk lower, you know. So so yeah, I can give you some more. Yeah, yeah, me too. Yeah. Hey. So yeah, you have good headroom here. So it's yeah, should be around 10 minus 10 is good usually. So if it peaks there, yeah.
Is it? How is it? That one? Yeah. Okay. So, good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you here. I see a large crowd, which is very nice for us. And I welcome you on behalf of Oslo Dignity Watch, which is our platform here. We have been working for 4 years to fight against human rights violations. And today we are going to have a panel discussion. So this organization is entirely volunteer-driven, and we are working actively on trying to show our stand with people who are in different violations, human rights violations. And I'd like to welcome you all, and especially our panelists and our moderator, and all of you who are physically here and also watching us live. To commence our program, we will have a song by our international Oslo Women's Choir. And they are there are people from more than 20 other countries in the world. And they are a group of vibrant people who will come here and perform. And we are eagerly waiting for their performance. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you very much. This was a piece by Norwegian composer Geir Tveit in an arrangement I have made. And this choir likes to sing folk songs from the members' countries. So we are now presenting for you 4 songs in different languages and from different countries. We'll let you know from where, starting in Albania.
Jarnana is an Albanian folk song, and it goes like that. As me jep njër uje, moj baluke prere. Meset e te jape, trendafil me ere. Jarnana, jarnane, jarnana, moj te keqene. And the translation is, give me water with your hands, O girl with cut bangs. With what do I give you, scented rose? And jarnana, jarnane.
Yes.
The next song comes from the Basque Country. It's a very small poem by Josian Arce from the 1950s that then it was put into music by Mikel Laboa in the 10 years later in the 60s. And it's a little poem about freedom and love and how you gotta love a person by what they are. So in Basque, it sounds like that. Egoak ebaki banizkio, nerea izango zen, ez zuen alde egingo. Baina honela, ez zen gehiago txoria izango. Eta nik, txoria nuen maite. And for those that are not fluent in Basque, English translation, if I had cut its wings, it would have been mine. It wouldn't have gone away. But that way, it could no longer be a bird. And what I did love was the bird.
Thank you very much. Next, going to.
Our next performance is Didn't Leave Nobody But the Baby, composed by a traditional artist unknown. And the piece was featured in the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?, which is set in rural Mississippi in 1937 and was performed by Alison Krauss, Emmylou Harris, and Gillian Welch. So this film was inspired by Homer's epic The Odyssey, and so this song represents the siren song and the allure of the siren's call. So enjoy.
Go to sleep, you little baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. Your mama's gone away and your daddy's gonna stay. Didn't leave nobody but the baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. Everybody's gone in the cotton and the corn. Nobody but the baby. Your sweet little baby. Your sweet little baby. Honey in the rock and the sugar don't stop. Gonna bring a bottle to the baby. Don't you weep, pretty baby. Don't you weep, pretty baby. She's long gone with the red shoes on. Gonna need another loving baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. You and me and the devil makes three. Gonna need no other loving baby.
Thanks again very much. And last song, we are going to Greece. Thank you for being here.
Το Μαργούδι και Αλεξανδρής. Το Μαργούδι και Αλεξανδρής βγαίνουν στην αυλή κρυφά-κρυφά. Άμα θέλεις μάνα, δείρε με. Πάλι εγώ θα βγαίνω στην αυλή για να βλέπω τον Αλεξανδρή. Margudi and Alexandris are secretly in love, but her mom doesn't approve. So they have to meet in secret. The gossip goes around in the village and everyone is judging Margudi, but even though her mother is yelling at her, she will continue to meet Alexandris.
No. Ageno, Sinagri, Anna Lepotona, Alexandri.
It was a mesmerizing performance, I think. It really touched our souls. Thank you. And you brought different countries here in one room. So thank you a lot. And I would like to present this to you. And maybe give you a hug. Thank you for the performance. Thank you, everyone.
Çalışıyor. Hello and welcome to our panel titled Escalating Human Rights Violations in Turkey, Criminal Proceedings and Mobilization of Global Sanctions Regimes. My name is Selçuk Gültaşlı. I am coming from Brussels, Belgium. I was the Brussels bureau chief of Zaman Daily. Zaman was the largest circulating newspaper in Turkey until it was brutally confiscated by the Erdogan regime back in March 2016. Today, we will discuss the increasing human rights violations in Turkey, in particular after the coup attempt of July 2016. We will have a particular focus on Hizmet, aka Gülen movement, which has been public enemy number one after the coup, which has been transformed into a hate object and dehumanized by the government. And the relentless oppression has been unleashed to all members and sympathizers of the movement regardless of age, gender, or occupation. But we will not only discuss human rights violations against Hizmet, we will also touch upon the problems of Kurds and Alevis. Recently, there is a stark increase in the rate of refusals of asylum seekers by Hizmet members in Norway. That is very surprising for Norway, which has a well-deserved name for human rights protection. The Norwegian authorities argue and claim that there is a softening of the position of Erdogan regime towards Hizmet movement and the persecution is less severe than before. That's why so many asylum seekers have been rejected. Is this a myth or a reality? Today, we will try to find an answer to this question. As a matter of fact, the persecution is not less but more severe than before, not only against Hizmet, but also against Kurds, Alevis, and to all those who dare to criticize the Erdogan regime. In fact, persecution of Hizmet goes on abatedly, as promised time and again by Erdogan himself and his ministers. Just to give a few examples, on May 7, 48 persons were detained, 16 of them being high school students. On May 15, on one single day, 544 members of FETÖ, quote-unquote, Fethullah terrorist organization, were detained with operations across 62 cities. Just last week, 562 members were detained with operations all over the country. According to the statement made by the Minister of Justice, between July 2016 and July 2023, judicial proceedings were carried out against almost 700,000 people, and 123,000 people were convicted. Currently, almost 68,000 persons are under preliminary investigations, and 27,000 persons are being prosecuted before the courts. As can be seen from these numbers, despite the 8 years that have passed since the coup, investigations and trials are still ongoing against nearly 100,000 people. It should be noted again, almost 100,000 people face the risk of going to prison today for the execution of their prison sentences, the minimum limit of which is 6 years and 3 months. After the coup attempt, people were not only subjected to criminal investigations and prosecutions. A state of emergency was declared on July 20, 2016, just 4 days after the coup, and 125,000 public officials were dismissed from public service permanently through state of emergency decrees. The implementation of Decree Law 674 resulted in the appointment of 95 trustees in municipalities that had been won by pro-Kurdish parties in 2014 local elections, replacing democratically elected mayors with public officers. Additionally, around 15,000 Kurdish workers, public officers, and nearly 300 muhtars were summarily dismissed from their positions, exacerbating the marginalization of Kurds. Also, the so-called academicians for peace who signed a petition calling for an end to the violence in the Kurdish part of Turkey were fired from universities as part of purges after the coup. It is not known exactly how many people have been dismissed from public service because the dismissals conducted through the procedures other than the emergency decrees are not published in the official gazette. It is, however, estimated that the number exceeds 250,000. The collective count of those who have suffered job losses in both the public and private sector amounts to approximately 400,000 people. The Turkish Interior Minister, on his Twitter account, brazenly reiterates the government's firm position and the persisting policy that the members and supporters of Hizmet traitors are traitors, the most violent terrorists who should be exterminated. In case of individuals associated with Hizmet, acts of assistance driven by humanitarian considerations have been construed as elements of the crime of membership in an armed terrorist organization and financing terrorism. On September 26, 2023, the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg took a historic decision and ruled on the case of a former teacher named Yüksel Yalçınkaya. The Grand Chamber found that the Articles 6, 7, and 11 of the Convention have been violated. In its judgment, the court emphasized that there are currently more than 8,000 cases pending before it on similar charges, and that this number is likely to increase significantly in the near future. The court noted that the problem is of systemic character, to which it calls for the authorities to find out effective solution without delay. Recalling Article 90 of the Turkish Constitution, European Court of Human Rights urged the Turkish government to find a solution to this systemic issue and to apply the Yalçınkaya judgment to all cases of similar nature. The European Court of Human Rights judgment has yet to be implemented by the Turkish government. Moreover, the Constitutional Court has not yet issued a single judgment complying with the case law of European Court of Human Rights in relation to thousands of cases of the same nature pending before it. The President of the Constitutional Court, let alone incorporating the European Court of Human Rights judgment into domestic law, said, and I quote, "We don't agree with the European Court of Human Rights judgment. The decision of the Constitutional Court is already clear." End of the quote. And stated that they will definitely not comply with the Yalçınkaya judgment. President Erdogan also made a statement on the issue, and I quote, "We will neither respect nor heed the calls of institutions that are in the same basket with terrorists. FETÖ scoundrels who have already been convicted in the public conscience will not benefit from this decision." The statements about the European Court of Human Rights judgment made by the leaders of the government, including the President of the Constitutional Court, clearly shows the presence of a strong resistance to the implementation of European Court of Human Rights judgment, which is binding under international law and the dictate of Article 90 of the Turkish Constitution. There are more profound issues within the Turkish judiciary. Neither the Court of Cassation nor the lower courts respect and implement the judgment of the Constitutional Court. In this context, the Constitutional Court should not be considered as an effective remedy in the domestic law. Let me mention the curious case of Can Atalay, a leftist lawyer who is in prison. Although the Constitutional Court has twice decided there was a violation of the rights of Can Atalay, who was elected as an MP in the last general elections, the Court of Cassation, for the first time in the history of Turkish law, and in a clear violation of the Constitution, decided not only to comply with the decision of Constitutional Court, and also filed a criminal complaint against the members of Constitutional Court who signed the decision in favor of Can Atalay. The Constitutional Court does not recognize the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights, and the lower courts do not recognize the judgments of the Constitutional Court. Can Atalay case clearly established that the whole state machinery, including the parliament, has been under the strict control of the presidential authority. In the current situation, it cannot be argued that members of Hizmet or Kurdish and Alevi activists may effectively seek justice for the violations of their rights, given 2 members of the Constitutional Court and numerous members of the other Supreme Courts are still behind bars on trumped-up terrorism charges. Government's resistance to the recognition and the implementation of European Court of Human Rights Yalçınkaya judgment and recent operations carried out against the members or the supporters of Hizmet leave no room for doubt that there has been no shift from the government's initial extermination policy against the movement, which has amounted to crimes against humanity. There are also news in the pro-government media that the new trustees will be appointed to municipalities to Kurdish-dominated southeast part of the country. There is no softening of position whatsoever in terms of the rights of Kurds either. It is just the opposite. Just 10 days ago, the Kurdish leader Selahattin Demirtas has been sentenced to 42 years in prison for his role at the Kobani protests in 2014. Let me underline, Mr. Demirtas is behind the bars since November 2016. He has been imprisoned right after the coup for being a member of an armed terrorist organization. Demirtas is well known for his repeated calls for a peaceful solution to the Kurdish problem. Despite initiatives taken by Erdogan to solve the decades-long Kurdish problem, Erdogan now argues there is no problem called Kurdish issue. Those who seek a peaceful solution to the Kurdish problem have been labeled as a terrorist. Besides the discrimination faced by non-Muslims in Turkey, it is important to recall that Alevis' places of worship, Cemevis, are not granted any official recognitions. Alevis are not represented at the Religious Affairs Directorate. Compulsory religious education classes at primary and secondary school in Turkey also penalize Alevis. These classes are particularly discriminatory against non-Sunni Muslim minorities. While Christian and Jewish students are exempt from the classes, Alevis are not. Alevis remain politically marginalized in the country with limited representation in official positions of power. Following the attempted coup in 2016, numerous journalists were imprisoned and media outlets were closed, including most of those broadcasting and publishing on Alevi culture. Thank you very much for your attention and patience. Without further ado, I want to give the floor to Professor Johan van der Lanotte, our first panelist. But before that, just a few words about him. Between 1995 and 2014, he served more than 13 years as Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium, the longest period for a Flemish socialist after World War II. In his last term, he served as the Minister of Economy and Consumer Affairs. During his political career, he continued to work as a professor at the University of Ghent, specialized in constitutional law and human rights. Since 2019, he is a lawyer and a senior legal advisor. He was the initiator of Turkey Tribunal, held in Geneva in September 2021. He also published one of the 6 reports of Turkey Tribunal entitled Crimes Against Humanity under the Roma Statute in Turkey Today. He is also the lawyer of Yüksel Yalçınkaya at the European Court of Human Rights. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was asked to make a report about the trends in the persecution of alleged Gulen movement members. We have made a small, short report. However, at the moment we were writing this report, I did not have yet some decisions about asylum seekers. So the report will be actualized and more detailed, and I suppose we can put it then on the website for everyone, that the more detailed report will be available. But the question was, is it true that, as we are told, that the persecution of Gulen, members of Gulen movement are slowing down? The report only answered this question. So it's not about the problems that Kurdish people have. It's not about opponents. In the Turkey tribunal, we carefully took the balance that every kind of persons who were persecutors were witnesses. So we did not limit ourselves. But today, the question was limited to the people from the Gulen movement. What are the reasons that we can find for the moment? That is, people say in the decisions, and it's not only in Norway, Netherlands also applies the same, plus or minus, a bit less clear sometimes. But they say, first of all, the rhythm of persecution is slowing down. This argument, I will say, and try to explain, is a bit cynical, of course, but also does not take into account the content of the persecution. And secondly, it is told there are now new judgments, and the judgments are changing the attitude of the judiciary. And this statement I will try to explain is false, it's not right. First of all, we have the history, the massive persecution, 700,000 people who were persecuted and 120,000 people convicted for terrorism. This is undeniable, we know that, but it's important to see, because when you have 700,000 people who are persecuted already, it is clear at a certain moment that the number that each day are persecuted will go down. That's logic. It does not mean that the persecution goes down. But that's why it's cynical. You cannot find all the time again 700,000 people who are considered to be terrorists, of course. 120,000 people convicted. There's no country in the world who has 120,000 terrorists on its territory. It's completely idiot to say that. Moreover, this persecution, now by some 20 judgment of the European Court, has been clearly analyzed and led to convictions of the Turkish state in all these cases. The judges, the prosecutors, teachers, whoever, journalist, whoever has brought his affair before the European Court, won his case. And there are now around 10,000 cases pending. I want to emphasize that this 8,000 specifically, like Yalcinkaya, was the lawyer of Yalcinkaya, the 8,000, the European Court now sends thousands cases in one time and just says to the Turkish government, what is your reaction, what will we do with it? They do not want to have a discussion anymore with the Turkish government. They consider these 8,000 cases as a violation. And they just want to know, what is your reaction, what you will do? This is unseen in the history of the European Court. They never have been doing that. They made one decision, the Yalcinkaya, who was very clear, and they say, we've done with it, you have 8,000 cases, try to solve it, make a good arrangement. For the moment, Turkish government does not react. Indeed, can we go to the next slide, please? Indeed, we had this landmark judgment of September 2023, the Yalcinkaya case, who more importantly said the basis on which you make your convictions, because it's clear, there was a failed coup attempt. Some people have used violence, no one's denying that. But when you want to condemn someone for terrorism, you have to have elements, you have to have the violence, you have to will to contribute to violence, you have to will to finance violence, or all these things, which is normal. However, the basis of the convictions are using the Bylock app, which is a communication like WhatsApp. It's a closed system. Not using what has been said or has been communicated, just the fact that this app is on your phone has been considered enough. There was one judge who was judge in the international court who came to Turkey, and he has been convicted because he used WhatsApp, because he was a Freemason and he was having secret conversations. The conversation was clear, has nothing to do with politics. He has been convicted because he used this application, putting money on a bank who was linked closely to the Gulen movement. Everyone who received a salary on this Bank of Asia could be seen as terrorists. You have the subscription of newspapers. You have being part of a union. And the European Court at said this is not a basis for a conviction. For a conviction of terrorist, you have to bring elements that prove the voluntary to contribute to violence, to disturbing actions. So everyone thought, okay, that's a breakthrough. That's a very important. It was the Grand Chamber. The Grand Chamber has about 10 times a year that it has a session, so it's very extraordinary. However, the day itself, the government said, we will not execute. We will not execute. So all these international judgments did not help. And since the Helsinkaya case till today, 3,000 persons have been detained on the same basis. So you can say, of course, now, we have put it in the report, it's only 3,000, and before it was per year perhaps some 5, 6, 7, 10,000. Yes, 3,000 is less than 10,000, but is that an argument? It's an argument that we only have 3,000 times a year that people who have nothing to do with terrorism are detained because of terrorism. Moreover, it is also clear what has been stated in some decisions that there are now new judgments is false. That's not true. There were already, before the Helsinkaya case, declarations of the Court of Cassation who said using Bylock is not enough, using Bank of Asia is not enough. These statements existed already, and or in the Helsinkaya, they took it in account, but it was not taken seriously. Court of Cassation said you have to prove terrorism, and then they condemned someone just for using Bylock. So saying that there are now judgments who are changing the attitude of the judiciary is not right. It's simply false. And if people say that, it's not correct. It's not right. Helsinkaya himself, according to the law, can ask a retrial. He is already busy 1 year with that. And for the moment, he has no solution yet. They are trying to find anything possible not to give him freedom, not to let him go. So saying there is a new attitude, not true, not correct. Secondly, it's not taking in account the consequences of this persecution. We had 700,000 people who have been investigated in. What is the consequence of an investigation? And I think authorities should take in account this. First of all, when there is a persecution started, not a conviction, it is mentioned in your social security system. So anyone who wants to employ you sees, when he wants to hire you, he sees you're a terrorist. As simple as that. It's a special mention. That's very strong. So this means that most of these 700,000 people who have been persecuted, and the 3,000 of the last months, cannot find a job. Secondly, as they were in a system of terrorism, they do not have the right to social security. And we have here this special attention already in October 2023, but since then systematically, people who are helping families of whom someone is in jail are also persecuted, because helping a family mentally, financially, materially to survive, because 1 or 2 members of the family is in prison, is considered to be terrorism. We have called this a social debt system. And you don't need to be convicted for that. But being persecuted, having detained some weeks, only being in the files makes you have a social debt. You cannot find a job, you have no social security, you cannot help people. I here have this story, and we read it. In one of the persecutions, someone was persecuted because he visited the grave of a friend of him who was allegedly a member of the Gulen movement. That's far they go. So now saying that the intensity of the persecution is only limiting it to the numbers, the 3,000, which already is high, but anyhow, but not taking account the intensity and the consequence for all of them. Everyone who has a judiciary complaint against him lives in a situation where he is at the mercy of friends, of help from abroad, whatever, but he's socially, or she is socially dead. That is what is happening today. And denying this, I think, is not the right way to do. And I go a bit further. Every country who is treating asylum has to take seriously, in a detailed analysis, what's happening in the country when you send people back. If you send people back and you know they can be subject to ill treatment, you're yourself, as a country, expelling people in violation of Article 3 of the European Convention. And that's what the Netherlands, and that was some decisions of the Norwegian asylum authorities are facing. I think we should take that very seriously. I just will say still one thing, because I was informed that we have not too much time, and that's logic. No, it's the other one. The recent detention, 7 May. On 7 May, around 50 people have been detained, of which 16 minors, most girls between 13 and 18 years old. Their crime was that they got English teaching. People linked or not to the movement were teaching them English for the school. These kids were taken 15 hours in police station without any lawyer, without any assistant, until they made declarations against their parents. This is a kind of cruelty that we should take more than seriously. And it shows clearly what persecution is. It's a kind of extermination. When you call the people belonging to the movement with the words, and I will not repeat them, with the words that the government use, and you say you want to destroy them, that's how you do it. You pick up, kill children, 13 to 18, young people, and you try to make them confess, between brackets, against their parents. So, first of all, do we have a changing in the judiciary? No, that's not true. That's not correct. That's wrong information. And that's looking to some wars who existed already before the Alsenkaya. And secondly, is the persecution less? The numbers by nature went down. The intensity of the persecution against all these people has not diminished. That's my conclusion. Thank you very much.
Now, I want to turn to Ragnar Nes, and just a few words about him. He's a Norwegian philosopher and activist, and his interest in Turkey dates back to 79-83, when he had a 3-year project in collaboration with the Turkish Workers' Association, funded by the then Minister of Labor and Municipal Affairs. Subsequently, he worked and published on Turkish Alevis in Turkey and Norway. From 1993 to 2001, he was the Turkey coordinator for Amnesty International Norway, participated in conferences on human rights in Turkey, organized English language courses for human rights advocates in Diyarbakır, Ankara, Izmir, Istanbul, with funds provided by the Amnesty. In May 2020, he founded the association Volunteer for Human Rights. Ragnar, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I do not know what you expect from me, really, but thinking about it, I would like maybe to say a few words about what the various encounters with Turkish people, what it taught me, what I learned from it. How much time do I have?
15.
well, it's dangerous to give me much time. So yes, it started out when I was working in the Foreign Workers Association in Oslo in the early 70s. I was intrigued by the Turkish people who came to one iron and metal factory in Oslo. And what I remember from them was that we had these huge meetings in the association where we had some 800 Pakistanis had come, and they were so many that they think they should run the whole association at that time. And then they started to come up to the floor and interfere. And then I saw that the Turkish people just nodded to each other, and then they raised up and they went up, and then all the Pakistanis fled at once. So of course it made me think, well, the Turks is a warrior race. This is a warrior. It's a people who are accustomed to fight. So this was a place I worked for 3-4 years. And then I left it for my studies. And the second thing was, since I had been working with foreign workers, I wanted to have money to go into working life, because I was working at the work institute in Oslo. And then I had heard that the Turks had a very good association, the Turkish Workers Association. And I asked them to work with me. So we worked together, but this was through the period in the late 70s. They started out with the father from the Anatolian village, together with the Kurdish student, together with the other ones. And in the course of these years, of course, this split up. All of it split up before the coup in the early 80s. But of course, what I did, I tried to do things to make them members of trade unions so that they could fight for their rights. And then they told me, well, you do not understand anything unless you go to Turkey, go to the villages where we come from. Then you will understand, but otherwise you will not understand anything. Well, so I went there. I made field work in 4 different villages. It was very interesting seeing that the village is the main point in Turkish culture, because when people went to work in Norway, there were always one man from one village who started out, and he brought the fellow villagers, so I could tell about the working places in Norway. That well, this is the Alevi working place. This is the Kurdish one. These are the people from Haimana. These are the people from Tunceli. These are the people from other places. And then I got friends, of course. So in a way, I feel Turkey is my second mother country. But of course, I ended up also helping people to Norway, because they were taken by the police during the military government and subjected to torture, and I helped them to Norway. Some of these friends I have still. And it's interesting, one of my closest friends, when he heard that around 2020, I worked together with what he called the Gülenci, the people from the Hizmet, from the Gülen. He was adamantly refusing at once. I mean, you should not work with them. They are bandits. And he's an enlightened person. And of course, this shows also the degree of polarization in the Turkish society. If it is not our party, then they are scoundrels. How much this is said. I tried to propagate human rights, for instance, at the end of the military government. There was, in fact, I think the only time in Turkish history where they really documented torture. Then I gave it to one of my friends, and he first said, I will not look at it. You know, if you suspect somebody is a criminal, you have to do this to find out about him. But then he read then this annual description, I think it was in 1990, from the Insan Hakları Derneği, from the Human Rights Association. And then which were medical records about everything that was done to the prisoners and the effects. And then he got quite white in his face and he said, it is terrible that human beings can do things like this to another. So this, of course, gives me hope that everybody understands about the human rights connected to torture. And then, as it was mentioned here, I went into Amnesty International, and then the people in Turkey said, we are helpless because none of us know English. So I organized these English courses. And it was a very interesting thing, because I spoke sometimes to a Turkish audience, and I said, it is very important to know that about a given standpoint or proposition, there may be different opinions. And there was one girl who came up to me afterwards and said, well, I thought about this, but I really think it is very difficult to think that there could be different opinions. So it means you have your conviction, and it is a great psychological challenge to see, well, but he means something else, and then you understand a little why he means this, and you disagree still, but you accept him. And of course, this is in a way one of the basic challenges of a democratic state respecting human rights. And in 1990, I went all the way to Siirt to visit Zubair Aydar, who was a member of parliament at that time, and whose wife was the president of the Human Rights Association. Because I had heard about the Kurds, I think I must go there. And it was also a very frightening experience. He collected some 30, 40 villagers, and all of them had the most terrible stories to tell. And I received papers from all of them. And on the way back, I was taken by the police at the crossroads of Diyarbakir. And I had this some kind of 50. But since I was a tourist, I was not touched. But of course, if I had been a simple Kurd, I wouldn't have had a chance. So this was a very strong impression. And I do not know what more I should say. I don't know if I have any more time.
Ragnar, before I let you go, I want to ask you, as an Amnesty worker, despite the fact that the Turkish authorities are launching almost on a daily basis an operation against Hizmet members and sympathizers,
Yes.
how come the Norwegian authorities can argue that there's a softening in the attitude in Turkey?
I'm sorry, I cannot answer that. I think it is very deceptive what is being said in the mainstream Turkish news. You have to read the Turkish papers and listen and talk to Turks, and the things that you said, of course, are documented cases. In this situation, of course, I would receive, when I was Amnesty official, I received a lot of these descriptions that are absolutely horrendous, and I do not think that Turkey can change quickly. I believe it is a long road, and still you have these contradictions inside between Alevis and Kurds. I could go on for an hour to talk about it, and I think it is not softening. But I think during the time of Turgut Özal in the 90s, it was a real beginning of a softening and a real beginning of some kind of toleration. And then, of course, Erdogan came along, and I think he made this speech early in the late 90s when he said, yes, democracy is a good train. We'll board the train and we'll travel with the train, and when we come a certain point, we step off. So a last thing I will talk about is one thing that Erdogan did in 2005, which was very good, was to propose a commission of international scholars to investigate what happened to the Armenians. because of course this is also one of the issues in Turkey, which is very felt like an important. When I left the village where I did my field work, there's an Alevi village, and this is the one I've been writing about. They came to me and said, the most important thing you must say when you come back to Europe is that it isn't true what we did to the Armenians. And I went into this debate, and of course, first thing I discovered, which is also very important for the view on Turkey, is that in Norway absolutely nobody knows about the biggest ethnic cleansing in the world of Turks, from starting by the rebellion in Greece when the Greek insurrectionists killed every man, woman, child, baby in the course of some months, or the atrocities in Bulgaria, or the atrocities when Russians invaded the Crimea, and all these people ended up in the Ottoman Empire. And of course then you get the culture where you feel that we do not like minorities, and we are very much aware of people who are villains or criminals, so we take them very hard. So in a way Turkey is a very violent society. I have not spoken anything about women's case, because this was the great anxiety when I came to the village the first time, that I would interview the women about their situation. The men got very upset by this. But then a friend of mine said, well, okay, you can talk to my wife, and I go out. So of course he could see the justice, the element of justice in this. But I'm not sure if Turkish women maybe are just as violent as the men. A Turkish friend of mine said that, well, if you cheat on a Norwegian woman, she sits down and cries. If you cheat on a Turkish woman, she comes with a bottle and hits you down. So I could, I think you understand, I could go on for hours and hours, but
thank you.
It wouldn't.
Thank you very much.
So I say thank you.
Now I turn to Jorgen. Let me just say that I watched your wonderful documentary on the coup of July 15, 2016, which I think it is still the most impartial account of what happened on that fateful night. And a few words about you. He's a Norwegian literary scholar and researcher. He has worked as a journalist and publishing editor, was employed as a researcher at the Center for Interdisciplinary Gender Research from 2003 to 2012. Since then, he has been the managing director of the HEDA Foundation, an organization that works on various artistic projects, has been involved in various freelance projects. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I would first like to say thank you to Selçuk and Johan for the introduction you both gave, which I think pointed out and very clearly the situation that we are still in when it comes to the situation of persecution of Hizmet, people related to Hizmet, or people alleged to be a part of the Gülen movement. I have here the letter written from the Landinfo, the country information. That seems to be the letter behind a different policy from the Norwegian state authorities or from UDI when it comes to treating asylum seekers from Turkey. And first I will say, this is a very small letter. It's not a full page. And out of this page, it is perhaps 2-3 sentences which is relevant for the case of looking into the situation when it comes to Gülen, also people related to Gülen movement in Turkey. And it is not only a short document, but it's also very thin. It's extremely thin when it comes to the investigation behind a letter like this. And of course, a letter from Landinfo is read by the UDI and people involved in cases related to asylum seekers. And it is disturbing for me, actually, to read it and understand that a letter like this could mean that perhaps only one person that is seeking asylum in Norway will be sent back to Turkey, based on these type of reflections. And I have to say, just read a couple of sentences for you. For example, says here that judges now are releasing people accused of being related to Gulen. And this is a breach to earlier praxis, it says, which is not true. Because a lot of Gulen-related cases was actually released right after 2016 also. They arrested 100,000 people, and they didn't have prison enough for all of them, and people were sent out, and then they were sent back again. Perhaps the most famous brothers that were imprisoned and then released, accused for supporting terrorism and the Gulen movement, is Ahmed and Mehmed Altan. And they were released, even though they were one of the main sort of characters in this, what you say, theater that Erdogan put up after 2016. I will also say that in the sentence here, it is quite true that people are still accused for and arrested for being Gulen, connected to the Gulen movement. But I have to say, there's a long way from an indictment to a judgment or a case that is convicted, even in Turkey. This is a strange sentence, which I have some puzzle, it's puzzling me to read it. Because what does it say? Because we know, if you have been following Turkey since 2016 and been following the cases and the indictments and the indictment processes, people have been imprisoned for years. From being accused of something to being even released, which some has been, which is true, after years in prison, or they are having a conviction. So it's strange to read from a country information like this, that it's not so problematic to send Turkish asylum seekers alleged or being a member of or related to the Gulen movement back to Turkey on a basis that perhaps they will be convicted or perhaps they will be accused and have an indictment, but after a few years they will be released. If you know anything, I've been interviewing a lot of journalists and others that have been imprisoned in Turkey. And being imprisoned in Turkey is in itself an act of torture, even if you are beaten or not beaten. And I have never heard from any official person in Norway that we can accept sending people back to any country in the world where we know they will be imprisoned for a short while and being tortured, which is the case of being imprisoned when you are an opponent of Erdogan regime in Turkey. This is very puzzling for me to read, and it's very puzzling to see if it is really the truth that people in UDI are sort of following this truthfully because they think that this is the case. We just heard the numbers from Johan when it comes to people that are still imprisoned. And the thing is also that imprisonment is one thing, indictments and conviction is one thing, but what is much more, I cannot say much more, but which is really important also to take into account, is what some of my friends have called the social genocide against people in Turkey. When you have 700,000 or even more people that are not able to get a job, they cannot go into university, they cannot study, because they are outside of the society in a way, because they have been convicted of, or they have been accused for supporting terror organization or activities related to terrorism. I've spoken, after I read this letter, I spoke to some of my colleagues and friends and people I've been working with in Turkey for the last more than 20 years. And I asked them, and I said, I read it to them, and I said, I'm quite surprised that this is the new information that is being now sent out in Norway about the situation in Turkey. And the result of my little small investigation among high-profile people in Turkey is that it is true that on the list of Erdogan's people that he's following or putting in prison, the Gulen people is not on top anymore. That was what I said. Journalists, Kurdish people, other people that is threatening his power situation is sort of on the top of the list. But if the Gulen-related people are on the second or third place, it is still there. And which I think is also important, because I think some of this way of thinking is related to that Erdogan actually had a big loss, you can say, in the local elections recently, where a lot of the big cities in Turkey was lost by the AKP party and won by the opposition. But as you all know, Erdogan didn't even comment on it. And it's important to understand the difference in Turkey between a local election and a national election. Because when İmamoğlu won last time the Istanbul, what Erdogan did was just taking away a lot of the decision-making that was possible to do for a mayor in Istanbul, and made the decision and national decisions. So İmamoğlu's power being the mayor of Turkey was really taking down. And this is how he's dealing with power, and how Erdogan, in a very, very smart way, is concentrating power and continue using the power in the way he knows how to deal with it, because he is for sure a very, very smart guy in the way he's doing. And I think it's very important to relate to what Johan said. When you have already convicted, accused, imprisoned close to 1 million people, and we can take into account all the people that have fled the country, which is also several 100,000 people, there are not so many left.
Indeed. That's why the numbers are decreasing.
Yeah. So of course the numbers has to decrease. When you have killed all the Norwegians, of course there are not any more people to kill. That's statistically true. So, but it's a difficult way of dealing with politics and how to relate to human rights. So for me, it is surprisingly, because Norway was one of the first country that said that people related to the Gulen movement or alleged to be a member of or related to will have easily getting asylum in Norway. And we know that from the first period after 2016, people were granted asylum in Norway just after a few weeks being here, which I thought made Norway one of the main countries in Europe to understand the situation of what was going on in Turkey after 2016. If this practice is now changing, I think it's hard to understand, and it's difficult, and we have to find ways to argue against it, because we cannot send innocent people back to Turkey and risk that they are imprisoned, even though they perhaps will only be imprisoned for 4 years.
Thank you. Before I let you go, one question for you. You said that maybe we have to convince Norwegian authorities not to send back asylum seekers. What can be done?
What can be done is, for example, having these arrangements and inviting Johan, and I'm happy that you yourself is invited, having the opening message. That's a way of informing the Norwegian audience and Norwegian politicians about the situation of what's actually happening in Turkey, and that changes are not. And the changes that is ongoing doesn't mean that Erdogan is less authoritarian, or that he has stopped imprisoning people, because he's imprisoning people all the time. Every day he's imprisoning new people. but he's also releasing. So he's sort of taking people in and out of prison. And of course, when you have an organization here, the organization has to be sure to collect more information from trustfully people in Turkey, and documentation based on international organization that is actually investigating what's going on in Turkey all the time, and send it over to the Norwegian authorities and ask for changes in this, for example, country information that is sent out.
Thank you. Now it is Ola Elvestuen. Last but not the least, a few words about him. He's a Norwegian politician and member of parliament for the Liberal Party. From January 2018 to January 2020, he served as Norway's Minister of Climate and Environment. He was the deputy leader of the Liberal Party from 2008 to 2020 and has been elected to the Storting from Oslo since 2013. He was the city commissioner for environment and transport in Oslo from October 2011 to September 2013. He chaired the Oslo City's Council Urban Development Committee from 2003 to 2011. The floor is yours.
And he's not an expert on Turkey. I've just barely been to Istanbul, but I can try to say something as a member of parliament, and also following the situation in Turkey. First of all, I think it's important that if you look at Erdogan, I think it's easy to see that he is controlling all executive functions in Turkey and acts on anyone defying his wishes. And the persecution is no less today than it were, and it may even the last few years also have increased. Even though this is a little bit divided, I think, on the impressions from abroad, because one thing you have the persecutions being strengthened, if it's also against the Gulen movements, it's against the Kurds, against Alevi and others, but at the same time you've had not a fair election. First of all, the presidential election, not fair at all, but still it was competitive. And now you had the local elections this year. So it's a little bit divided impression from the outside. What I think is important for us is to understand that the persecution still continues, the imprisonments continues, the torture continues, that thousands of judges and prosecutors has been replaced, and you have all these politically motivated prosecutions today, as it has been, and this has increased. Of course, it was earlier in 2016, but it continues just as it has before. That you have all these people that lost their jobs after 2016. I think what I read was 125,000 people that still cannot get any employment, and as you've all said, that's been kind of like put outside of society as a whole after this attempt. But everyone here is much more experts on this than I am. What is important for us, I think, politically, is to take this in, that this is the situation, and then also to see what is happening on the Norwegian side. And I do not know why, as you say, this country info has been changed. No one would put any pressure on someone to have a professional view at it, but I will still ask: is it a how can I say? Is it a pattern on it? Because everyone knows that immigration and asylum it's a political topic here, as in all countries in Europe. And I would imagine that as we got a new government also back in 2021, they put forward in many areas that how can I say, kind of like a limiting on asylums, There's no doubt that now it's a little bit, it's a stronger policies now than it used to be. And if that is so, if a question has gone out for the foreign minister and those who are working on this country infos to go through more countries, not just Turkey, I do not know. But I think for us, it would be interesting to see if it's a pattern within it. That is one area that can kind of like explain that, as you say, it's very hard for you that really know the details and really know the situation. Why is this coming up now when there's really no change in the country as such? Why is this coming up now? And of course, the tragedy is that for the individuals that are applying for asylum, this is the crucial and the most important situation that they are in. And the other part that is kind of like laying behind, but I do not know if it affects any of the positions from Norwegian government onto Turkey is of course the whole security situation in Europe, with the Russian attack on the Ukraine, with the changes and enormous quick changes here in Scandinavia, where you have the Swedish and Finnish application for becoming members of the NATO alliance. That is also something that is also complicating of course, our relation with Turkey as being part of NATO, and also getting Sweden and Finland getting in quite quickly, but then of course Turkey, Hungary holding back on the membership of Sweden. And as you know, Sweden had a lot of contacts. They had to I do not know how much happened behind the scene, but even what it was in the news, there's no doubt that they positioned themselves a little bit different so that they could get that approval and get into NATO. If that also have affected policies from the Norwegian government, as you have this very close cooperation within the Nordic countries, I do not know. But these are the kind of questions that I think it would be interesting to try to get a better view of, both that on if there's some special way that this has been implicated, and also if it's a broader pattern where they're making it harder to get asylum. If that's a broader pattern, I do not know. But I think the most important that we do, or you do, is what you do here. And that is to put attention on the situation in Turkey, so that everyone knows that the prosecutions, they continue as before. They may even have been, they're stronger now than they have used to, that they used to be. I mean, if you look at I look at the evaluation from Freedom House, they talk about it's a worse situation now than a few years ago. That goes against, I think, what most people think is happening. So these meetings are important, and I have to take in the discussion that are here, and we have to kind of like put our positions when it comes to that. Politically, though, I must say the relations between Norway and it is difficult, and it's difficult also to say what we should do. The goal on our relations has to be that Turkey develops into a more democratic and free country. That is the goal. And how can we best use our position and policies to push Turkey in that direction? I do not know if it's always very easy to bring up sanctions, if that is the right way to do. I do not think that is the right position as it is now. I think it is a position where you have to show a strong position, show that we know what is going on. People that are prosecuted has to have their rights and get their rights here and get their asylum if that's what they need. At the same time that we also, it is a country where Europe has to have a position where you you react and have a strong position at the same time that there is a cooperation where we have to pull and try to pull Turkey in a more democratic and free way.
Thank you so much, Ola. Just a quick question for you. Norway is well known for human rights. It's one of the champions of human rights on earth, which is you should be very proud of, I think. But there is this increasing rejection of Hizmet, the Gulen movement volunteers in asylum seekers in Norway. Don't you see there's a contradiction between the two, being champion of human rights and rejecting those people, asylum seekers in Norway?
Yeah, that's what I also, as I said, I question also the what has been the changes that have happened and why they are there. I mean, if people are persecuted and because of their views, of course they should get an asylum here. There's no doubt about that.
All right, Jørgen.
Am I allowed? Is it? I'm back on. Yeah. If I'm allowed to ask a question myself to Ola, I will happily send you the letter.
Yeah.
And then, is it possible for you to ask a question in the parliament about the reason and meaning of this letter?
I would have to look at it, and then we have to think about it and try to make it a little bit more general, I would think, because it's always how is it when we just ask a question, we often know
the answer.
The answer.
Yeah. But then
so
you
so
can
it's
make a change here.
So it's a little bit. So it's a little bit to see. But I do really think it would be interesting and also to look at it if this is a broader pattern that is from the government, or if it's more beneficial to look at, as you say, that you have individual cases that people are being sent back and being persecuted, and that could also be a way to approach this situation.
Right, Johan, yes, please.
Well, I totally agree that when you ask a question, you should know the answer. That was always what I learned in politics, and it's everywhere the same. But I think there are 2-3 things that happened. First of all, there was a group of people sent, I think 30-40 people who visited Turkey to see. That is, of course, that's the worst way of trying to make decisions, unless you have a small group who's very specialized in it. The Turkish government, and we have all been examples of that, seen examples of that, is very smart in explaining how they change, what they do. When we started Turkey Tribunal, I was 5 hours with the ambassador, explained everything and so on. So they're quite working on that. So having 30-40 people who are not really specialized to see what is going on, that's not a good idea. You need 2, 3, 4 people, and institutions like Amnesty, Freedom Press, and other, they know the situation. I'm working now for around 5 years, I think, and I must admit, the first 2-3 months we were working on, I did not believe what they came to say me. I did not believe that. They said, well, that's a little bit exaggerated how you say, but they have to see it. And it's also the way the Turkish government works with the history that you have been explaining very clearly, a polarized society in an extreme way, that you can explain what happened. It's a country who can change 2,500 judges and prosecutors in one day. Yeah, so that I think was a mistake, to make your land info based on a visit of 20, 30, 40 people. That doesn't work. Secondly, I suppose, and that's in every country, Norway is not the only one, at a certain moment, I suppose when Sweden had the problems with the NATO, I do not suppose that a lot of people from the Green movement still came to Sweden, so they all went to Norway. And at that moment, you certainly have in an administration say, oh, what's going on? That's very common in a lot of countries. It's not right, but it's common. So if you want to know what's happening, these 2 elements surely have to be taken in account. A report that is, in my opinion, a little bit, because they say it's less, you have less people who prosecute, but that's not the question for an asylum seeker. It's an individual file. And you have to see if this person is sent back, will he risk a prosecution, and how strong will it be? The fact there are less people does not make the persecution for this person less. That's no reasoning. So I think it has been a not so detailed report and examination on the spot, combined with the fact more people came here with a reaction, okay, that we have. I think it will also be needed that the Landinfo, the people of the decision makers, I don't know how exact the asylum procedure is in Norway, that they are well informed, and that's our duty. I think it was a very good meeting to have this. I learned a lot. We will remake our report because I find the report now not good enough. It's not enough elements. We have to work on that. But I suppose it's a rule of law country, Norway. If we have good arguments and you bring it forward, I cannot see that it would not work. It's our job. We have to make sure that our information is very correctly, very detailed, not exaggerating, objectively informing authorities. If they have a bad, in our opinion, decision, you can go to a court, I suppose, and defend your case. That's the way it should work in a rule of law country. And it is a rule of law country. No one is doubting that.
Johan, I want to ask you, can you please speculate on the reasons behind the Norwegian authorities thinking that there's a softening of position in Turkey?
Everyone thinks that.
Everybody, it's not only Norway.
Yeah, but that's everyone. I think, listen, there is something. We introduced a complaint to the ICC more than a year ago. At that moment, the war in Ukraine started 2 weeks before. It says here, I said, this is horrible for us. It's horrible for Ukraine and for us. And then afterwards, the Gaza war came. There is in international and national politics room for some topics and some issues, but not all. That is not how to say, that's not an excuse. It's not a good reason. It is not how it should be, but that's reality. A government, administrations, international politics, international institutions. Even if you see now Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and this, they are busy with Gaza, they are busy with Ukraine. And it pulls the attention away. That is what had happened. And also, it was in 2016 hot news. There is no news that stays 8 years hot news. So the attention has dropped. We feel that also. I also feel that in the work we are doing. So if you want to know how it comes, because first of all, no one can imagine that 8 years after that, the things are going on like they go on. I was explaining to someone that people who are helping people of whom the husband was in prison, that they were also prosecuted. No one believes that until you show it. If we see that children from 13 to 18 or 15 hours in police without a lawyer, no one believes you until you show. So that's the first element, that the long time that it's went, it's out of the attention, and it is out partly of concern. I think we have to bring it back to that place. And this is a bad occasion. I wanted to say a good occasion, but it's a bad occasion because the reason we're talking is that people do not get their asylum procedure attribute. So, but we have to put it again in attention.
Do you have any hope about ICC?
No, very few, because I give, when the war in Ukraine started, the ICC was for 1 week, had no access to any computer because the complaints came. So they have a complete new system with new collaborators, a complete separate, just to be busy with Ukraine. And then the war in Gaza came. They're completely, for the moment, out of resources and possibilities. That's the reality. We will bring now a new actualization of our complaint, but unfortunately, the situation is what it is. And we will bring it under attention and continue. There was Gramsci, who was a communist in Italy, who said you do not have to be hopeful to continue. And that is the most important. You have to continue. And sometimes you reach something. Yeltsin-Kaya, we never thought we would go that far. The judgment of Yeltsin-Kaya was above our expectations. But you do not have to hope to continue. That's the most important lesson.
Ragnar?
It's very important when we work with human rights that we must not work too much legally, and we must not here in Scandinavia adopt a kind of condescending attitude. And there are many things I think we should understand about a country like Turkey if we compare with Russia also. We see there are different periods of very strict rule that are followed by periods of attempts at democratization, and it becomes chaos. This was at the end of the 70s when you had many parties in Turkey and people started shooting each other in the villages because they belonged to different parties. And I think part of the attempt must be to bring together the ordinary Turks and the human rights defenders and Norwegians and use talk. I did a lot of work in Russia on dialogue conferences because Russia is also a very divided, polarized country. And then we get back to this question that we must imagine that other people mean the opposite of myself, and still we must respect them and we must say, okay, I disagree with you, but I will not shoot you. But of course, Russia and Turkey today is still in this situation where you in a way think, well, we have to have a strong leader, even if he's bad, otherwise we'll have chaos. And unless we address these things, we get the strange things like, for instance, the Human Rights Association in Istanbul, who made a motion that denial of the Armenian genocide should be forbidden, which of course is the opposite of a dialogue approach. But because of course this discussion gets very legal and it gets very organizational about exactly what should we do and what shouldn't we do. But I think we should use half of the time trying to bring these opposite people with opposite views together. This is really a reaction I have when I listen to all the three of you, that what I said about my impressions of Turkey for 50 years now, I believe this is important for people to work on and to work together.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jørgen?
I would like to underline that we are in a rush here. And that is why I'm asking Ola about if it is possible for him to raise the question in the parliament.
A wonderful idea.
Not tomorrow, but next week. Because last week my wife got a phone from a woman in Norway, crying on the phone, telling her story about that she is now from the UDI, got a message that she will be returned to Turkey. She knows what will happen with her when she's going, if she will be sent back. Of course, she's trying to postpone it and see if it's possible to change the decision of the UDI. But this is about people that have been living in Norway or now been coming to Norway in the last period. This is about single persons. This is about people that have neighbors, they have children, they have husbands, they have wives. They are here, you know. That is why it is a little bit of a rush. I agree with Johan that we have to send down Amnesty and PEN and other human rights organizations to research better and go back and say that this is actually not the truth. This is not the situation on the ground. But we need to speed up a little bit because that will take half a year or a year before they will get back with their reports. In the meantime, UDI will still continue practicing this letter. That is why I'm trying to underline that we are under pressure here.
Right. Ola?
Yeah, and we are a country of where rule of law has to be here. So of course, we individuals that need to have asylum must get that asylum. That cannot be part of a broader political pattern. And you can say that's why I asked if is it a pattern or not.
Yeah.
Just a few weeks ago, I asked a question about Ethiopians being sent back.
Yeah.
That have stayed there for 15, 20 years. Now a lot of those got to stay, so that there was a change in the policy. So it is possible, even though you will not get a minister to look into the individual cases, it is still possible to look into if there's a pattern there and if there's some way to adjust if it's obviously so that people that should have asylum here and they risk persecution, they risk to send to prison if they're sent home, that is something that can be looked into. Apart from that, I think the problem now is a little bit the broader picture.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a prime minister that's a diplomat, has been a diplomat his whole life, Gahr Støre, and always views Norway as a tool in the international relations that can help find both peace solutions and other solutions. And of course, then if you just look at the importance of Turkey in the Middle East and also in the Caucasus and also on towards Ukraine, it is right now I think it's a government that do not really want to find the negative things, or they do not really want to find things that can make it more difficult on a bilateral level, because they have this higher approach to it, and that is kind of like a problem with, because even though Erdogan, even though he's still behaving like this authoritarian, definitely that decides everything, and everyone knows that he can decide everything. He's still in a position that the rest of the world, he's important in many aspects, and in many of these areas. So that's a problem.
Thank you. Before I open the floor for questions, Jørgen, I have to ask this question. Are you planning to shoot the second part of the documentary?
We finished the documentary in 2019, and some people were there under the premiere in Oslo downtown, and it was just this far from being creating a big fight in the audience between the people that were more critical against Erdogan's regime and people that supported him, that was sent there by the embassy. And they really attacked some of the other people there, and it was due to actually very clever and smart woman from the cinema, working in the cinema, just going in between and saying, "No fighting in my cinema. If you want to fight, you go outside." And then the Erdogan supporters left the building. But after that, I'm sorry to say, my wife and me that made the film together got the message from the ambassador that we are now, from now on, in the same positions as some of you, enemy of the state of Turkey. So I would love to answer your question. I would love to make a follow-up. I would love to continue the film, because new evidences, I've got a lot of new evidences about what was going on 15th of May, 16th of May in Turkey, that I would like to put together, and what has been happening after that also, of course, would be very, very interesting. But I cannot make a film without going to Turkey. I don't think it will be truthful and honest like the film we made. And it's interesting to say that even if that is a film about the coup attempt in Turkey, we have been attacked, of course, by a lot of trolls, Erdogan trolls, but neither of them, they're calling us all kind of shit, but neither of them have one argument against any of the proofs in the film, which I think is the most important part. So I would love to do it, but it's difficult.
We look forward to it. Thank you so much, all for you. I open the floor for questions right now, and please introduce yourself and to whom you are asking your question.
Firstly, we thank you since you helped us by expressing the unlawful practices in Turkey. My name is Müberra Bilgebal and I'm 19 years old. I live in one of the refugee reception counters with my mother and my brothers. We have been waiting for residency interview nearly 19 months in Nume. Recently, we have heard some news that Norwegian officials say that those unlawful practices in Turkey became decreased. And now, the atmosphere in Turkey is more moderate for the followers of Gülen movement. And so, because of this thought, many refugee seekers who is affiliated with Gülen movement have been rejected in the UDI interviews lately. We left Turkey 2022 and come to Norway. As it was reported in the press, our father had been in prison for 5 years and 7 months. After he was released, he was arrested again almost 23 months later in March 2024. The last 8 years, we couldn't have a chance to be together as a family. If there became a moderate atmosphere for the Gülen movements, Gülen followers in Turkey, why is our father still imprisoned? And why can't he get his freedom although he is certainly innocent? And why do we read the news about the police operations against same innocent people in Turkey every day? My father is one of the concrete samples of the ongoing pressure against these innocent people in Turkey. Now our family is separated and we are in despair. And if our residency application will be rejected, and if we will have to return to Turkey, we are afraid of being arrested and sent to prison like our father. Our father's situation is like that, and we have been waiting for a date of residency interview almost 1 year and a half, and we are worried to be rejected. Please hear our voice and help us to notify our justified request to Norwegian officials. Thank you.
So it looks like a commentary, not a question. Yeah. Yeah, the next, please.
I would like to say thank you for sharing it. And it goes straight into the subject of our discussion.
And the importance that this is about the individual.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's about everything for those that that are in that situation.
We will send the report to you too. If when you apply, you can use the report. Just give your name and your email, the detailed report. Okay.
Beklager, jeg vil snakke på norsk, hvis det går bra. Ja, du kan svare.
Det går bra.
Jeg tror at demokrati er alt. Hvis et land har ikke demokrati, da veldig vanskelig å gjøre ting og jobbe for menneskelighet og det andre. Jeg tror at staten i Tyrkia ikke bare forbrytelser for alawi og kurdere og de alle andre inne i Tyrkia. De også gjør folkemord i syriske Kurdistan og andre delene, i irakske Kurdistan. Derfor verden må reagere, må gjøre ting. Kurdere er en av nasjonene som gjør best for å knuse IS. Men nå, det er kurdere nå straffes. Det er dobbelt moral. Jeg har masse ting å spørre, men jeg ønsker at det er eneste ting kan forandre litt grann. Støtte i den tida Salahaddin Demirtas får Nobelpris. I hvert fall det kan være en litt grann hjelp for den saken. Vær så god.
Jeg vet ikke om jeg kan prøve å...
Can you translate?
Yes, we didn't understand.
A little
Okay.
bit.
Oh, of course. So it's only us that...
Yes, indeed.
Demirtas for Nobel Prize.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
No, but it's more about also the situation for Kurds. And not only in Turkey, but also in Syria, in Iraq, and also in Iran. So it's and also a request that we have to react and also put pressure on the countries because of that. That is kind of like the question. So my answer will be that when it comes to the Kurdish question, the answer has also to be different when it comes to the different countries. I mean, I am also in contact with a lot of people. In Turkey, I must say, I still believe, we have to believe that Turkey is possible to get more in a democratic way. That is, even though it takes time, it's still a road that is possible. And I think that also the elections that are there, it shows that can go in that direction, and we have to work on that. And also on the right, so now I don't remember the part HDP,
Yes.
they are all in prison. And new name I don't really remember. So we have to put a pressure on to getting the rights, of course, to everyone in Turkey. When it comes in Syria, I mean, now you mentioned that how Kurds have fought against the ES, and of course they are now stuck with ES and needs more support from us, both to take back those that are also Norwegian, so that every country takes what they have as their duty in a way. But you need that strong that will stay there. In Iraq, it's about also the Kurdish areas there needed to have elections and a democratic development. They have not had that for quite a while. And I am also in contact, and quite good contacts also with the opposition in Iran. And Kurdish lady that was killed. Amini, yes. But also there you have to support the opposition so that you can get that necessary revolution, and it's really a revolution that we need in Iran.
En småting Salahuddin Demirtas kandidat I år for Nobelpris.
Yeah.
That I understood.
All right. I see a hand there, yeah.
Thank you for doing. My name is Ramasan. I have been here from 2004. I'm from Glenmont, but I'm not asylum seeker. My question is to Ola, because he's the only politician here. You said broader pattern long ago. In 2018, I think, the UDI director came with an explanation to the Norwegian public that he said, we understand that some people worried about the Gulen movement will develop roots in Norway, and they worried about this, but still we should obey the rules. When you said larger pattern, you mean this only about Gulen movement, or is generally about asylum seekers that Norwegian government do not want to them?
So that is what I question, if it is a more general pattern, that it also affects also the evaluations of the situation in other countries, or is this only a new situation when it comes to Turkey? And the reaction from us should no matter be that individuals that needs asylum should get that asylum. That cannot change because of the situation in the world changes, or if you have a situation where the government here changes. I mean, if you have that individual right, or if you need that asylum, that is a part of a human universal right, and that has to be followed. So that is, if for me it's an approach on towards the government, that is what we have to, that's how we have to frame the questions and try to influence that way.
No more questions? Oh, we have one, okay.
My name is Abraham, and maybe what I am about to say may not a question, maybe a brief of my experience. In Europe, figures like Galileo Galilei and Nicholas Copernicus face persecution for their work and even died under oppression. In the Anatolian lands where I was born, there are hundreds of similar names. I believe that those born in Turkey here could easily name dozens of such individuals. I was in prison in 2016. They changed my prison location 3 times, and I lost count of how many times they changed my cell. They didn't allow me to receive the pajamas my family brought, making me wear shorts through the winter. I won't go to detail about the suffering inflicting on me, my fellow inmates and people I know, because I don't want to upset anyone here or take up too much much of your time. I will just share a brief incident. While we were imprisoned, there were rumors that Erdogan would send his military groups into prisons to kill the inmates. Both we and our families were deeply distressed by this news. During such a period, they transferred me to another prison without informing my family. When my family went to visit me, they were told I was no longer there and were not given any information about my new location. My father thought I had been killed and become very ill. My mother already worried about my possible death. Also fell ill due to my father's condition. I believe everyone here is a parent. Imagine what you would feel if your child faced such a situation. I believe one of the most important common traits of good people is that they receive a good education and possess good morals. The people associated with the Hizmet movement have both. It would befit the Norwegian state to support these good people who have faced and continue to face persecution. Norway is one of the first countries that come to mind when we think of human rights in the world. I hope Norway will continue to lead in this area. Additionally, the Norwegian government should try to understand the psychology of people applying for asylum. People are afraid to say they belong to the Hizmet movement. One of the main reasons is that the translators are Turkish and may share their information with Turkey government. Many people associated with the Hizmet movement could not declare their affiliation for this reason. However, they were granted recently because of the legal actions against them in the Turkey. I kindly ask the Norwegian state to consider this situation. That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Süleyman. I want to talk Turkish because my feelings are still Turkish. Türkiye'de 5 yıl hapiste yattım. Hapisten çıktıktan sonra da 7 ay sonra Norveç'e geldim. 1 yıldır da Norveç'teyim. UDI'nin bu aralar kararlarını verirken Türkiye'de bir şeylerin daha da düzeldiğini, artık ya da hapis yattıktan sonra çok da sıkıntı olmadığı üzerine kararlar verdiğini duyuyorum. Ben yaklaşık 5 yıl hapis yattım ama 5 yıl hapisten sonra çıktıktan 7 ay sonra yaşadıklarım hapiste yaşadıklarımdan daha da fazlaydı. Kendi memleketimde, köyümde hapis yattım. Evime 300 metre ileride. Çıktıktan sonra tamamen bir tecrit yaşadım. Akrabalarımdan, arkadaşlarımdan olsun. En fazla yaşadığım sıkıntılardan bir tanesi de şuydu. Bir yerde çalışmak istiyorsun, zaten damgalısın. En ufak bir ticaret yapmak istediğin zaman bu zaten işte yakında hapisten çıkmış bir kişi olarak bakılıyor. Bunu sosyalite açısından da söyleyebilirim. Ama asıl sıkıntı UDI'nin fark edemediği sıkıntı, güvenlik güçleri tarafından hala takip ediliyorsun ve en büyük sıkıntısı da şu: tekrar yeniden yapılandırma adı altında gözaltına alınıp tutuklanabiliyorsun. Tutuklandığında da şöyle bir şey oluyor: ben hapisten şu şartla çıktım, terörist olduğunu kabul edeceksin dosyasına imza attım. Bu şekilde çıktım. Eğer ben bunu imza atmasaydım hapisten çıkamıyordum. Çıktığımda da izinli çıkmış oldum pandemi izninden dolayı. Çıktıktan sonra eğer beni 3 kişiyle görmüş olsalardı, Gülenist arkadaşlarımla, tekrar yeniden yapılandırma adı altında içeri alacaklardı. Ve 7 yıl 6 ay hapis aldım. Bunun tamamını yatacaktım. Ekstra bir dosya daha açılacaktı. Bu dosyanın da indirimsiz halini yatmak zorunda olacaktım. Nitekim bunu yaşayan arkadaşlarım da var. Çıktıktan sonra özellikle emniyete çağrılıp tehdit edilenler de var, hapis gösterilenler de var. Bu sıkıntılar devam ediyor. Bu sıkıntılar devam etmesine rağmen UDI bunları neden dikkate almıyor ya da bunlardan haberi yok mu? Çok merak ediyorum. Teşekkür ederim.
Yes.
Now I need a little bit of translation.
Yeah. He said he was imprisoned for 5 years in Turkey, and then he was released on the condition that he should sign a document in which he would confess that he was a terrorist. He did it, he signed it, and then he was released. But he was released because of the pandemic, COVID. And he said he was very much isolated. He couldn't find any job. He was unemployed. And still, while we are out of the prison, the Turkish state security apparatus are following us, are still profiling us. And when all these things are happening, I'm wondering how Norwegian authorities, UDA, don't know these things and behave as if nothing is happening. It was a summary of what he said, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe to you.
Thank you.
I don't have a good answer, other than that, as I said, what has to be put forward, that the prosecution continues as before, and maybe even stronger, and that we have to look into and ask why they change their conclusions. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you very much. I introduce myself. My name is Parviz. I'm a proud Norwegian citizen, but originally I was a diplomat, career diplomat from Iran. But after Khomeini took over the power, and we have jumped from the ashes to the fire. So I defected my embassy in Norway, and I'm a citizen of Norway. And I also work very much in order to promote human rights in my old country, which was one of the founders of the civilization in the world. But I wanted to just convey my gratitude and utmost thanks to Mr. Ulla Sven for his effort in order to defend human rights in Iran, also in the region. I'm very proud of him, and we are very happy that we have some people like him in Norway. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
I saw a hand there. 2 hands.
Nå skal alle snakke plutselig nå.
I think it might be the end, should we say? Maybe the last ones? Okay.
The last one.
Yeah. During and after, especially during and after our day interview, Norwegian officials said that we wouldn't have any problems when we returned to Turkey. Is it legal for them to give the answer during an interview? Who can guarantee that nothing will happen to us when we return to Turkey?
A difficult one.
Well, of course, they cannot guarantee. And so the question is that they have to, I mean, how can I say the problem often is that every decision is made based on a former decision. And that is the problem with the country profile. So if they say that is kind of like that is you being used as a base, and those that use that information as a base to take their decisions, they have their back free.
Yeah.
And that is, because everyone their base is not then it's not their responsibility, it's the responsibility on the Landinfo. And that is if this is the case, that is kind of like the thing that has to be broken in a way and redone, so that you get a different foundation, and then they can take their decisions onto that again. That is this is not only in these important issues, in a lot of official businesses, you get a problem that everyone base their new decisions on what has been decided before, and then it's not their responsibility because they just do what is being decided ahead of them.
It's also kind of normal that when you have an asylum procedure that you have information about the country. Each country has land info to base the decisions on. So the problem, as I see it here, is not a decision on asylum, but a decision to report on the land info. If that is wrong, it's like you said, if your foundation is not stable and horizontal, you cannot build a house that is stable and vertically right. That's impossible. Your foundation has to be right, and the land info here, if I hear that, and of course it is easily, because it's one page, and so it's easily taken in account. It will be true, that can, but the basic is the land info is not correct. And I can say it with clearly, knowing a bit the situation, the land info is not correct. It's not correct, simple. And that is the thing that has to be changed first. And we could criticize the authorities for asylum that they go a bit easily based on this land info, but the problematic situation is that. And a government, to be honest, need to base decisions on that. You cannot have a government who is on its own now saying this, saying that. So this land info is something that has to be done carefully, that has to be reliable. And that's, if I see the things here, is the big element in this discussion. I don't know how the procedure is. I suppose when they make a decision, you still have to go to court. I don't know how it works, but the land info must be done a very detailed way. Yeah. And as long as it is not, it cannot be used.
Yeah.
Huh? Because my friend here said it takes too long to change, or you said it takes too long, that's true, but as long as we see, as we contest it, and we say, listen, it's clearly that it's not okay, they cannot use it anymore. And they have to make a new report. That's what I think it should be the question to the authorities. That's in my opinion.
It's even bad grammar.
Yeah, so follow up. So what I need as help then is that it doesn't help for me to ask a question, because that then it's just something I ask, and it's something that I kind of like I put forward a statement on something that they will not listen to. So what I need is an authoritative description of the situation in Turkey that is as authoritative as this land info, so that they will have to answer why there's a discrepancy between those two. Because
that we will try to make. I think we're
that
not.
I think something that doesn't help anything. That is just a question up in the air.
That's what we like to do.
1 page.
No, it's more. You need
only 1 page, anything.
No. You need more. You need more because we're not authority. We have no authority, but we have experience, and we can show that we experience. But you need to show elements. For instance, the fact they say now there are decisions where they say bylaw is not decisive, but they have been doing that for years. They just don't apply it. And it is criticized. So we need to, in detail, to show that and help the people. But we will do it quite fast. Don't worry. Because it's urgent, so we will do it fast.
Good.
Okay?
Good.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, Johan, Ragnar, Jorgen.
Wow.
You want to say something?
Regarding land info, in my 10 years in Amnesty International, of course, we received all the time documents from Turkey. And with a great network, it is not difficult to get the correct information. It simply has to be done. And it is done today. We have WhatsApp by telephone, which cannot be traced. So I think it is a general task to get all the contacts in Turkey so that one can document what actually is happening.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We have bylaw, we have
Thank you all. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
Okay.
I would also like to thank everyone for coming and making today possible, especially our esteemed panelists and our moderator. Thank you for sharing your years of experience with us. It was really enriching, and we'll take our insights from you. And thank you everyone who has been working at the background and making this event possible. And thank you everyone coming here physically and also live. Thank you. And now we'll have a token of our appreciation, some flowers. Thank you. Maybe we can start from you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's for you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. And one for you. Thank you very much for being here with us. And one for you. Thank you very much for coming. I've left our moderator to the end.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for today then. We hope to see you in new events.